In this lecture, we're going to talk about blood clots. So the scientific name for blood clotting is hemostasis, and it's the stoppage of bleeding that results from the breaking in a blood vessel. And a broken blood vessel can break inside your body, so you have like a bruise or something, or it can break outside your body if you have a cut or something. And hemostasis involves three major steps. So there's first vascular spasms, and then a platelet plug formation, and then coagulation. Vascular spasms mean that vasoconstriction, which is the changing in diameter of blood vessel, causes the blood vessel to spasm. And the spasm will narrow the blood vessel, which decreases blood flow to the area, which is a good thing because that decreases blood loss. There are two layers of muscle in the walls of blood vessels, and so both of those layers can contract or constrict, and that causes the blood vessel to become narrower, and that causes blood flow to the area to decrease. The next step is platelet plug formation. So this is when collagen fibers are exposed by a break in the blood vessel. So there's collagen fibers in the walls of the blood vessel, and if the vessel is broken, those fibers are now exposed to other parts of the body. Platelets become sticky when they sense those collagen fibers, and they cling to the fibers. The anchored platelets release chemicals that attract more platelets, and then you eventually end up with a lot of platelets there that pile up, and they form a platelet plug. And that covers the hole in the blood vessel in the meantime so that further repair can happen. So here you can see the yellow little collagen fibers that are exposed when the blood vessel is broken. And then the platelets, these little purple guys, are going to come and stick to those to the collagen fibers and attract more platelets. And they can plug the hole for the short term. The next step is a process called coagulation. And so this is when injured tissues release something called tissue factor. And then PF3, a phospholipid, interacts with tissue factor, blood protein clotting factors, and calcium ions to trigger what's called a clotting cascade. And prothrombin activator converts prothrombin to thrombin, which is an enzyme, and so that's going to be important. The thrombin joins fibrinogen proteins, and they form hair-like molecules of an insoluble structure protein called fibrin. And fibrin forms a meshwork, so it's basically like the basis for the clot, and it's kind of like putting several layers of cheesecloth over something, right? So it's going to stop some fluid from moving through, and it's also going to trap cells and things like that so they can't get out of the blood vessel anymore. So here you can see that fibrin patch. So it's just this very busy, dense network of fibrin proteins, and those are going to form mesh, and that traps blood cells and platelets, and that's going to form a clot while the tissue heals. So in this picture, this is a scanning electron microscope image, and you can see that fibrin clot and how it traps all of these red blood cells so that they can no longer escape the blood vessel. Blood typically clots within 3 to 6 minutes for normal cuts, and the clot remains as the endothelium regenerates, so the cells that form, like the lining of the blood vessel and things need to repair and things like that, and so the clot can hold while that happens, and the clot will be broken down after the tissue is repaired. You can have undesirable blood clotting. A thrombus is when you have a clot that forms in an unbroken blood vessel. And so thrombuses can be deadly if they are formed in areas like the heart or like in your lungs, like a pulmonary thrombus. If you have an embolus, this is a thrombus that has broken away and floats freely in the bloodstream. So an embolus can cause serious problems if it clogs a blood vessel in a critical area such as the brain, heart, or lungs. So a thrombus can lead to an embolism. Other disorders include thrombocytopenia. This is when you have a platelet deficiency, so even normal movements can cause bleeding from small blood vessels that require platelets for clotting if this is occurring, and so people bleed more than they should from small injuries. And hemophilia is a hereditary bleeding disorder where normal clotting factors are missing altogether. So people who are hemophiliacs often have to get blood transfusions to get those clotting factors present, because they can also bleed in kind of inappropriate ways, right? They bleed more than they should from small cuts. If you lose too much blood, that can have very serious consequences. If you lose 15 to 30% of your blood, that can cause weakness. And if you lose over 30% of your blood, that can cause shock, which can be fatal. So the only way to replace blood quickly is through a transfusion. And transfusions have to be the same blood type as the person who is receiving the blood. Otherwise, they can have a catastrophic immune response. So we'll talk about blood groups in the next lecture.